Oh boy, here comes another re-release on next-gen consoles. This time it's a PlayStation exclusive known to the world as The Last of Us Remastered. So, should you pick it up if you've already had the PS3 version? If you've never played it, is it worth your time? Will my leg ever stop twitching? This is JBlaze06 here with another video game review on the Black Oni channel. Let's get right into it. Black Oni. Let's talk about presentation. This game is gorgeous. There, I said it. It's one of the best looking games that you can get on next gen consoles right now. It's difficult to imagine how this game could have been a more visually appealing experience than the PS3 release last July, but the added horsepower behind the PS4 really makes a difference. The game runs at 1080p in mostly 60 frames per second, but you will occasionally notice a drop in frame rate here and there. Colors are sharp and vibrant, animations are silky smooth, for the most part, and the UI is just as non-obstructive as before. The PS4 hardware is miles ahead of the PS3, and the art direction stands out even further as a direct result. The world around you pops with a sense of immersion and life, or death, but part of that immersion is also due to the superb sound design. I could feel my heart racing as I slowly paced myself, playing PS4 version on Grounded. With the Cordyceps infected enemies, more on that soon, I could hear the sick and twisted remains of their human side emerging from beneath the fungus infected facade as they moaned and groaned while sporadically navigating through the environments. It was unnerving, even for someone like myself who's already played it on the PS3. Sneaking in bushes, walking in puddles, and punching an enemy square in the face just feels, oh, so satisfying. Voice acting is also perfect, as it's easy to find yourself quite attached to the characters, even the ones who don't stay around for that long. Joel is voiced by none other than Troy Baker, and Ellie is voiced by Ashley Johnson. But the amazing voice talent isn't only limited to the two primary characters of this tale. Bill, Henry, Tess, all these characters are voiced by phenomenal voice actors that made these characters not only feel interesting and distinct, but alive. I'm not gonna do the voice anymore. I'm done. Music is often moody, but non-obtrusive. Throughout the game, you will hear several musical scores, each with differing levels of intensity, depending on whether or not you're in the heat of battle, exploring, or trying to sneak up on unsuspecting opponents. The acoustic guitar is a very common theme throughout the game, and it even ties into one of the main characters. It feels appropriate in that it's beautifully played, but has a somewhat dark undertone. That speaks a volumes to the world in which The Last of Us takes place in. Let's talk about gameplay. Most of the control scheme is fairly standard, with circle being to crouch and sneak around, right trigger to shoot, left trigger to aim, etc., etc. Square activates your melee attacks, which are contextual, based on the surrounding elements in which enemy you're going against. L1 brings you into listening mode, which gives you a visual of where enemies are based on the sound they're making, essentially making it a radar. The D-pad gives you access to your quick select options, such as weapons and a health pack. Interestingly, and exclusive to the PS4 version, you use the touchpad to bring up the full inventory, including collectibles and a look at all the things you can craft and the materials you need for them. Speaking of crafting, Gregway! I'm not Greg Miller, so I can't really pull that off. What is the equivalent of Gregway for Will? Willway? Will? Give... Segwill? Crafting is another layer of depth behind The Last of Us. In the game, you collect materials that you can combine together to create items such as smoke bombs, makeshift grenades, also mines, Molotov cocktails, health kits, and shivs. You can also modify melee weapons you find in the environment to make them a one-hit kill melee item, which also carries into multiplayer. Speaking in terms of pacing, the game never feels like it's thrusting you into a situation you can't handle, based on everything you've learned throughout the journey. Except in Grounded mode. Nothing can prepare you for Grounded mode. Level design is also really interesting. The game is linear in that it guides you through a variety of locations and scenarios, but how you choose to navigate through those areas and tackle the puzzles is all up to you. I very specifically use the word puzzles because every scenario is essentially a puzzle in this game. Sometimes you're trying to figure out how to navigate through the level, as certain circumstances can sometimes prevent you from taking a direct route to your next destination. Other times, however, enemies are your obstacle, and you have to decide how to approach the situation. Do you go in guns blazing, or do you take the more calculated and stealthy approach? The decision is yours to make, but you'll likely find yourself gravitating to the stealthy approach, as ammo and resources aren't as plentiful as they are in other third-person games. In addition to a stellar single-player experience, there's also a deep and intricate multiplayer experience. It's an experience that demands players' full attention and proper coordination to consistently be successful. This isn't a twitch shooter like Call of Duty or Battlefield. It's very calculated and very purposeful. Everything that you do in the game should have a purpose. It encourages teamwork, a concept that many gamers still don't quite understand. Despite the typically solid online experience on the PS3, however, the PS4 has been suffering a myriad of issues since the get-go. Online matches are often laggy and riddled with bugs. During launch week, it often took 15 minutes to actually get into a match. And when you did, people often left or presumably got kicked out, a problem that still persists today. The other thing about multiplayer was that although several gameplay elements transitioned from single player to multiplayer really well, one that shouldn't have transitioned was the speed in which your camera moves and the aiming reticle. On both generations, I found myself unable to properly react to situations because the camera was just moving too slow. I can't be the only person having this issue, so if you're having those issues, feel free to leave a comment down below. It's not game breaking, as this is just my preference for mobility, but it's definitely frustrating. One thing that really tipped the balance on the negative side for this game was the shady business practices for the multiplayer experience. Initially, Naughty Dog made a public statement about their online multiplayer maps, saying that they didn't want to segment the gaming community on PlayStation 4, so all multiplayer maps would be free. Months later, they decided to announce DLC would be paid for. Then they retracted that statement once the complaint from online users flooded in about the online issues. To Naughty Dog's credit, it's great that they actually retracted that and actually made the maps free, but it shouldn't have even been on the table for debate in the first place. In addition to that, weapons and perks are being implemented as paid-for DLC, which fundamentally changed the balance of the game. In-game voice chat is horrendous on PS4 unless you're using party chat. Other players' voices constantly distort and cut out, and the in-game voice chat quality is usually worse than the native voice chat on the PS4. For a game that is so reliant on communication and teamwork, it's a huge detriment to the online experience and needs to be fixed ASAP. Let's talk about the story now. It's difficult to discuss the story without potentially ruining anything, so here's my best shot. Shit happens. Okay, a lot of shit happens. And even at its worst, it's still miles ahead of movies, books, or other games in terms of story investment. It's a gripping and highly impactful story, one you will likely never forget. You will feel a variety of emotions in this game, similar to Journey, in that you will feel fear, excitement, anger, sadness, and joy, and you're usually left wanting even more. The world of The Last of Us is deep, with meta stories through the form of notes and journals scattered around the game. It takes place in modern time, 20 years after the prologue. Again, I won't ruin anything, but wow, way to play at the heartstrings. I mean, first 20 minutes. Right here. If you're new to the concept of the game, there are these fungi that exist in real life called Cordyceps that only affect certain genus of insects, typically arthropods. This fungus essentially turns these insects into mind-controlled zombies, burrowing deep into their nervous system and altering the chemical balances, making them act sporadically and out of control. They then find areas that make it easier for the fungus to spread by either going to higher grounds or into the nests, and releases spores to further infect colonies of insects. Neat, but terrifying. Now think of that concept applied to humans, and there you have the premise that is The Last of Us. In the interest of time and spoilers, I'll leave it at that. It's an incredible journey, and the way the story unravels the details in between events and the subtle nuances about each character and their pasts is really just masterfully implemented. Even people who don't play video games are drawn to The Last of Us simply due to its narrative. The Last of Us is a long journey, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. It feels just right in that it provides you the details about the characters you need to know in order to be invested in the experience. It's fun, challenging, and truly one of the best games of all time. The PS4 version also comes with the single-player DLC included, as well as several online maps and goodies. Online multiplayer has 3 modes, which are admittedly very sparse, but enough to keep many people coming back for more. It's worth noting, however, how much of a huge missed opportunity it was that there wasn't a survival horde-style cooperative mode. The single player sets itself up literally to have this exact thing happen, and I don't understand why it's not in there. Hopefully that Naughty Dog will be listening to this review and will implement that, but maybe not. It's also worth noting that this game literally just came out last year on the PS3, with Naughty Dog calling this the swan song on the PS3. Naughty Dog also noted that they had no plans to bring this experience to the PS4, but here we are, a year later, with the game on PS4. There's an interview about this very thing in the description down below. You can check that interview out. It was dated 3 months prior to Naughty Dog releasing The Last of Us on PS3. It was revealed later that the PS4 version was being worked on as they were wrapping up work on the PS3. So the shady DLC practices mixed with the lack of transparency and blatant lying makes me want to tell gamers not to support Naughty Dog for that. But here's the thing. The game is brilliant. It's a masterpiece. You would really be missing out on something really special if you didn't pick this game up. It's also worth noting that there were a few graphical glitches that weren't present on the PS3 that were on the PS4, but that's just nitpicking. If you already bought the game on PS3 and got your mileage out of it, I suggest getting this game on deep discount. I picked mine up because of GameStop. Yes, I said GameStop. Wait. Before you go anywhere, just bear with me for a second. Hear me out. They had promotion going on at GameStop to trade in your old PS3 version for the PS4 version, and they would give you $25 back to put towards The Last of Us on PS4. So I just sold Battlefield and some other game that I knew I wasn't going to be touching for a while to get that. So I got it for free, essentially. For anyone who has missed this game for whatever reason, you should pick this up. I would call this a must-buy. And here are the reasons why. This breathtaking visuals and art direction with astounding production values. Story is easy to understand with several layers of depth for those who pay attention. An addictive gameplay utilizing several elements from other genres. Let's talk about the bad. The online multiplayer still experiences several bugs, lagging, and experiences that detriment it. The shady DLC, business practices, and relationship with consumers, and there's a lack of online modes. And so, there you have it, folks. My review for The Last of Us. I spent a long time putting this review together. There were a lot of things I wanted to touch on and talk about. It's really hard to talk about the game without spoiling anything. If you've been listening to the podcasts, we have been talking about it before in the past. There are a lot of things that are done in this game that are very different than stuff that's done in other games. Again, I can't really talk about any of them without spoiling anything, so you'll just have to find out for yourself. But even coming from someone like myself who's a huge Metal Gear fan, this is amongst my top games of all time. Yep. And so if you guys enjoyed the video or found it helpful or insightful or useful in any way, remember to support the channel by pressing the like button and subscribing, and obviously just share it with your friends so that we can get the discussion revolving around all this stuff, especially with the stuff I talked about, the shady DLC and business practices. The more people who kind of know about that stuff, the better. And thank you guys, of course, for watching this review. And there are many more to come, so make sure you're subscribed so you can stay tuned to all the stuff that's coming up and all the stuff that's already on the channel. And keep being awesome. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next review. Game on. J-Blaze out. And now it's time for the bloopers! With the facade infected... damn it! That's not the right word at all. Interestingly, and exclusive to the... Interestingly, oh my god, I can't speak. What would be the equivalent? Nothing can compare you to ground. See, I recorded all this stuff already, and then this camera decided to not have it recorded, so now I have to do it all over again. really challenge you to be as resourceful. It feels just right. It feels just like right. Who the fuck writes that? What the fuck are you doing? Stop! It's worth noting, however, how much